Mexico and Latin America and Spain.
Okay.
Then it's going to be watched by many, many people. I never thought I could have this chance to meet you.
Oh.
Really. ¿Está transmitiendo?
Está grabando y está transmitiendo.
¿Ya empiezo?
Adelante.
Estamos en el tercer congreso de Ufology World Congress en Barcelona con el Dr. Michio Kaku, probablemente el hombre más brillante que existe en el mundo en estos momentos, un hombre que ha podido pues presentar la perspectiva de hacia dónde se dirige la humanidad, y es para nosotros un verdadero honor realizar esta entrevista. Thank you very much, Dr. Kaku. It's a pleasure to be here with you. Why did you accept to participate in a conference like this?
Well, I'm a physicist. We believe in things that are testable, reproducible, and falsifiable. Now the tide is turned, because traditionally scientists would giggle and laugh talking about flying saucers and UFOs. The burden of proof was on the believers. Prove it. Give me the evidence. Show me. Now the burden of proof has shifted to the government and the military. Now they have to prove that these sightings are not from outer space and another civilization. Several things have happened. First, we have videotapes. Videotapes taken by United States Navy pilots that are testable. We can now see and calculate how fast they move, how fast they can zigzag, what is the altitude. We know the parameters of these objects now. We didn't have that before. And so this means that the burden of proof has shifted. Now the military, the government has to prove that they are not from another planet. Now, they still might be hypersonic test vehicles. Russia, the United States, and China, all three countries are experimenting with hypersonic vehicles, but that's a big question mark. The other possibility is that, who knows, maybe they are evidence of visitation.
All this evidence of visitation, what do you think of it?
I think we have to be open to the possibility because of the fact that we have now discovered 4,000 exoplanets orbiting other stars. On average, tonight, when you look in the sky, on average, every single star has a planet going around it. And in fact, in the galaxy, we can now do a census. We now realize that there are over 1 billion planets that are Earth-like in our own backyard. So to assume that we are the only ones, I think is a bit presumptuous when there are literally billions of Earth-like planets orbiting other stars. That's also a game changer. So I think the tide has turned. Now people are open to the idea that yes, maybe there are civilizations in space. After all, the universe is 13.8 billion years old. 13.8 billion years old. How old is science? Science is 300 years old.
Well, if you consider from Galileo to now.
That's right. 300 years ago, we were all peasants, and we believed in books rather than doing experiments on the universe. So we have to be open to technologies beyond the conventional realm.
Can we learn from them if we start to studying them?
Well, we physicists have seriously analyzed the possibility of intelligence throughout the universe. How did we become intelligent, for example? We have eyes, we have thumbs and grasping ability, and we have a vocabulary, we have voice, we have language. Those are the three ingredients for intelligence. Now look at the Earth today, the animals of the planet Earth. How many of them have good eyesight, opposable thumb or a tentacle, and a large vocabulary? We're the only ones. However, in outer space, why can't we have alien civilizations that also have good eyesight, good grasping ability, and a language? That's the prerequisite to create an intelligent civilization.
You mentioned the number of planets, that the possibility, according to National Geographic, it could be 40 billion planets that could be like Earth. And these really could harbor many civilizations out there.
That's right. Realize that since the universe is 13.8 billion years old, civilizations could have risen and fallen many times in the past, and we wouldn't even know about it. That's how primitive we are. Now, I have friends of mine, physicists, who search for signals from outer space, but it's very primitive. We looked at radio signals, but maybe civilizations don't use radio. Maybe for us, radio is old-fashioned already, but that's what we look for. And so we realize that we're just beginning. We're just beginning to confront the possibility that there are intelligent civilizations out there.
Well, there are other signs that have been discovered recently, like the Tabi star, like these probably huge structures, around some other stars. It looks like now we have 3 different examples of that.
That's right, and we have to realize that civilizations in the future could be type 1, type 2, or type 3. They could be type 1, planetary. They control the weather. They control volcanoes and the oceans. That's type 1. Type 2 controls a star, like what you mentioned. Perhaps they can cover their entire star and use that as an energy source. That's type 2. Then there's type 3, a civilization which is galactic, which is several thousand years more advanced than us, that roam the galactic space lanes. So if these evidence of visitation is from an extraterrestrial civilization, they could be type 3, that is galactic. They play with black holes, they roam the galactic space lanes.
And they could be eternal.
Immortality is something that we scientists are looking at even today. 2 types of immortality that perhaps aliens may have. One is digital immortality, to digitize everything known about us, to create a copy of us that is totally digital. I would love, for example, to talk to Einstein. Everything known about him can be digitized. His books, diaries, videotapes, lectures, everything can be digitized. I would love an opportunity to talk to him. Then there's genetic immortality. We are now isolating the genes that control the aging process. What is aging? Aging is the buildup of errors, mistakes in our DNA. They build up with time. That's why we get old. That's why we die. But now we have genetic engineering to fix many of these mistakes. And so genetic immortality may be possible, perhaps sometime in this century.
And also the Kardashian is telling us that this, how you call it? They call the levels of society.
Right, the Kardashian classification.
They mentioned that probably the most difficult is to go from civilization type 0, like we are, to civilization type 1, especially because of the interest in the oil industry, in the fossil fuels.
Right, we realize that we are type 0. We do not play with the weather, we don't play with stars, we don't play with galaxies. We use oil and coal as our main energy supply. But we are about 100 years from becoming type 1. What is the internet? The internet is the first planetary type 1 technology to fall into our century by accident. English and Mandarin Chinese are the 2 dominant languages on the internet. Planetary languages are being formed. Planetary sports, soccer, football, the Olympics, planetary sports, planetary music, rock and roll, planetary fashion, Chanel and Gucci. So we're beginning to see the beginning of a planetary culture emerging, and by 2100 we will become a planetary civilization. But I think that if we are ever visited by another civilization, they will probably be type 3. Now, why do I believe that? When you talk to most scientists about flying saucers, they laugh, they giggle, because the distances between stars is so great, they say. It would take thousands of years for them to go from one planet to another. But you see, that assumes that they're type 1. That assumes that they have antimatter fusion type rockets, very old-fashioned. But if they're a few thousand years ahead of us, 1 million years ahead of us, that's the blink of an eye in the age of the galaxy, then perhaps they have new ways of going across the universe.
That's traveling faster than the speed of light.
Well, we have something called the Planck energy. The Planck energy is the energy of the stability of space and time itself. Space and time become unstable when you go to the Planck energy. We have in Geneva, the Large Hadron Collider, the Planck energy is a quadrillion times greater than the Large Hadron Collider. And if you could attain the Planck energy, you can create shortcuts, perhaps shortcuts through space and time. In other words, go faster than the speed of light using Einstein's own equations.
It means that the wormholes, so-called wormholes, could be a reality?
That's right. In 1935, it was Einstein himself who first introduced the concept of the wormhole. He took two black hole solutions, stuck them together to create a gateway between them, and that became the first wormhole. And that's like Alice's looking glass in Alice in Wonderland. When Alice had a looking glass and she put her hand through the looking glass, her hand went from Oxford, England, to Wonderland. That is a wormhole. And it is a solution of Einstein's equations. And a type 3 civilization may have access to the Planck energy, in which case they may be able to use this as a technology.
In January 20th, 2005, there was a huge solar explosion from the sun. And the protons, the matter from the sun, came to Earth in just 8 minutes. The scientists wonder if there were some portals between the sun and the Earth. And as we understand, it was proven by 2008 that they really existed.
Well, we do know that if the sun were to explode right now, it would take 8 minutes for us to realize that, because gravity travels at the speed of light. We know that now. We have gravity wave detectors, first predicted by Einstein in 1916. We now measure it. Gravity travels at the speed of light. Then the question is, are there anomalies there in the fabric of space and time? We now know that when light goes around a galaxy, it bends. Light can actually bend because space itself bends around a galaxy. So space is not uniform and flat. When that space and time is like a river that can bend and twist and turn as it goes across the heavens. And so we now realize that Einstein's equations are have more surprises than we originally thought.
One of them is this possibility that could be something else besides the relativity.
In fact, Einstein didn't go far enough. I work in something called string theory, where we believe in higher dimensions beyond length, width, and height. We think of a three-dimensional world where we can move freely in 3 dimensions, but why not 4, 5, 6? Why not hyperspace? Well, in physics, we do believe that there could be up to perhaps 11 dimensions. I work in something called string theory, which we think will allow us to have a theory that goes beyond Einstein. Einstein's equations break down at the instant of the Big Bang and the center of a black hole. To go beyond a black hole, to go through creation itself, requires a higher theory, and that's string theory. And string theory says that we could exist in a higher dimension, perhaps 11-dimensional hyperspace.
Is that possible?
Oh yeah, we think, in fact, that's the dominant theory in theoretical physics, that there are other dimensions out there. Something that used to be considered a crackpot idea is now mainstream physics.
This string theory is your theory. I mean, you have become one of the main experts on this.
Yeah, I'm one of the co-founders of string field theory, one of the main branches of string theory. And we think that it is a solution to Einstein's famous question, can we read the mind of God? Is there a God equation? One equation that goes beyond relativity, beyond the quantum theory, that unifies everything into one consistent, coherent theory. And we think that is string theory.
Your last book, or one of your last books, The Future of Humanity. Can you tell us about that, please?
Yes. We now realize that perhaps when we become a type 1 civilization, we will go to the stars. We have fusion engines. We will have fusion engines, maybe antimatter engines, with the ability to go to the nearby stars. But that's just 10, 20 light years from the planet Earth. But I think in the next century, we will have the first starships. Now, once we become type 2, then there's a possibility of going beyond into the galaxy itself. And I think it's inevitable that we will have to do this. You see, the dinosaurs did not have a space program. That's why they're not here today. How come there are no dinosaurs here today? They had no space program. We have a space program, which means we need an insurance policy, Plan B. Just in case something bad happens on the planet Earth, it's good to have a settlement. And we will be on the moon starting next year. We're going to orbit the moon with the SLS booster rocket. By mid-decade, we'll be on the moon. And by 15 years, we hope to be on Mars. And so that's just the beginning of a Type 1 civilization. And imagine by the time we're Type 2, we will have colonized the entire solar system and even beyond to nearby solar systems.
What are the challenges to colonize Mars?
Well, one of the problems is cost, but costs are dropping. For example, if you take a car ride from your home to work and then you junk your car, cars will be very expensive. One ride, one car. That's rocketry today. We only use rockets once, just once. We junk them. What a waste of money. That's why we reuse cars, and now reusable rockets are coming into play. It costs $10,000 to put a pound of anything in orbit around the planet Earth. Take a book, weighs about a pound, put it in outer space. How much does it cost? $10,000 a pound. Now, that's your weight in gold. Think of your body made out of gold. That's what it costs to put you in orbit around the Earth. To go to the moon is about $100,000 a pound. To put you on Mars is about $1 million a pound. But once we have reusable rockets, once we decrease the cost of space travel, then perhaps these costs will drop to the point where families can go into outer space. I believe that our grandkids, they may honeymoon on the moon. They may consider the moon a great place to have a honeymoon. And on Mars, yeah, by the end of this century, we will have a permanent settlement on Mars.
Well, they are planning to have a hotel around the Earth by 2025. Is that possible?
Oh yeah, it's possible. It's a question of cost. We have to bring the cost down. It's an engineering problem. The basic physics was worked out during World War II. So it's a question of engineering and cost to make it safe and make it affordable for mom and dad.
And is the moon going to be habitable?
Well, in principle, yes, but there's not much on the moon that we can use to live off the land. You see, the early pioneers were able to live off the land. They could plant crops, they could shoot game, they could live off the land. They didn't have to bring water, they didn't have to bring air, they didn't have to bring soil with them when they came to a new world. On Mars, we do. So we have to create a self-sustaining colony. One way to do this is to have satellites go around Mars to heat up the ice caps. The ice caps have plenty of water. Mars once had oceans, rivers, lakes, almost a tropical environment practically. By beaming energy from the sun onto the ice cap, we can melt the ice caps, and water will flow on Mars once again.
What happened in Mars? What happened? They say now that it was like Earth some billions of years ago.
In fact, Mars was tropical before the Earth. Mars cooled off before the Earth. Some people think that maybe DNA got off the ground on Mars first, because it cooled off first.
We are Martians, probably.
And perhaps we are the Martians, right? So what we have to do is several things. First of all, once we're on Mars, we have to have energy. We'll get that from sunlight. We have to create genetically modified algae to thrive in a carbon dioxide cold environment. So genetically engineer plants, algae, to thrive in this environment of the planet Mars, to create crops so we can eat.
Like in The Martian?
Like in the movie The Martian, right?
Is that possible? Are we going to do it? Are you looking at Mars as the next house for human beings?
It's definitely possible. However, cost again is going to be a problem. One of the things about cost is that the asteroids may be the stepping stone for colonization. For example, years ago when Thomas Jefferson negotiated with Napoleon to buy the mid-half of what became the United States, Thomas Jefferson thought that it would take 1,000 years to colonize the Midwest. It took a few decades. Why? the gold rush. In 1848, gold was discovered in California, and instead of taking 1,000 years to colonize the United States, it took just a few decades. There's a new gold rush because asteroids have platinum and rare earth elements in large quantities. You see, when the Earth was molten billions of years ago, many of the rare elements sunk to the center of the Earth. So the Earth does not have too much of these very valuable elements. Asteroids never had that. Therefore, asteroids have more platinum, more rare earth elements that are commercially valuable. One large asteroid can pay for the entire space program.
Really?
Yeah. That's how much platinum-based materials and rare earths there are.
I even heard that there was one asteroid with gold. It was made of gold. Is that true?
Well, possible. In fact, we have a planet in outer space that we discovered that has diamonds. Turns out that carbon is in very hot form, sufficient to create a planet made out of diamonds.
However, it's far away.
Very far away. Right?
Do you think then the future of humanity is safe? Because now we are looking to the climate change, we are looking to the population growth, the scarce quantity of food, the aliments.
Well, I don't think we should go to Mars and the universe to escape the problems of the planet Earth. We are Earthlings. This is going to be our home planet for many thousands of years. So we have to use our own intelligence on the Earth to solve Earth-like problems. I think we should go to Mars as an insurance policy to spread our wings, to see what's out there in the universe, not necessarily to settle the entire universe, that'd be very, very expensive, but to begin the process of creating a settlement on another world.
Are you optimistic about this? I mean, will human being learn about all these mistakes and solve the problems in the future?
Well, I would hope so. You mentioned like overpopulation, right? We realize that every few years the United Nations projects the population of the future, and it gets more and more reasonable every year. Because when nations get old, like Japan, they have fewer children. The population of Japan is contracting now. It's going to lose, by mid-century, it'll lose about 1 million people per year, according to the latest projections in Japan. Europe is next. Germany, Austria, Switzerland, populations are not growing as fast as we once projected. Why? Because people are richer. When you're richer, you live longer, you have fewer children. And so the population explosion never happened in Japan, and it's going backwards. China is beginning to experience the same problem. So overpopulation is a problem, but it's not as big as we thought.
What about the climate change? What about the fossil fuels? And now we are very worried because the whole world seems to be on flames.
It's not science fiction. We measure with our satellites. Every glacier is receding on the planet Earth, every major glacier. All the indicators are up. More forest fires, more floods, more extreme weather. All the indicators point up. But there is some good news. Why don't we have solar power and wind power everywhere? We've made inroads, especially in Europe, with wind power. But why don't we have all of it with sun power and wind power? The problem is not wind or solar. The problem is storage. Everyone forgets this. The battery. The battery does not obey Moore's law. Moore's law says computers double in power every 18 months. That's computers. Solar cells do not become cheaper by half every 18 months. But now inventors are creating the super battery. Super batteries that can make power generation when the sun doesn't shine and the winds don't blow. That could easily double the efficiency of solar and wind. And so now inventors are concentrating on creating batteries which can store this energy when the sun doesn't shine and the winds don't blow. Plus, on a scale now of decades, fusion power is a possibility. In southern France, Carthage, France, the European Union is betting on the ITER hydrogen fusion reactor. That would mean that one day, seawater would give us energy forever.
And the batteries?
Yeah, so the batteries are coming. Realize that battery efficiency is increasing every year. Prices for batteries have dropped, efficiency is up, And it means that with super batteries, we'll be able to even out the energy cycle. For example, utilities have to prepare for peak summer, peak winter. That's when people want power. Peak winter, peak summer. Then you cannot store electrical energy very well. With a super battery, you can even out the energy cycle. So the energy cycle does not look like this, it's much flatter. And you can save a tremendous amount of money with the utilities. So the utilities are very much interested in the super battery.
And what about trash? What about plastics? What about plastics on the sea? Do you see any solution there? Are we going behind to other generations?
Well, I think we should, one, pass legislation so that nations have to be responsible for the garbage they create. But two, let market forces kick into play, that objects should include the price of disposal. When you buy something, you're not paying for the price of disposal. You're just paying for the manufacturing costs.
Exactly.
Right. So we may have to tax certain products so that we can, from the tax money, pay for the cleanup operation. And that would allow market forces to drive down the cost of waste.
Recycle?
Yeah, recycling, government regulation, plus the market forces by taxing, by putting more taxes to include the cost of disposal.
What about the conscience of the people?
Well, that's a slow process. You see, democracies do not work in a straight line. Democracies depend upon an educated population, and it takes time to educate people. It takes time and effort. But I think it's happening. I think people are aware that global warming is a problem. They're aware that we have limited resources on the planet Earth.
Animals and species. What is happening around the world?
Well, many people believe that in the past, perhaps there was a comet or meteor that wiped out diversity on the planet Earth. Some people think that a new comet has hit the Earth called humans. That is, you and me, we are the new comet that has hit the Earth, and it means that life forms are disappearing on the planet. Now that's very dangerous, because we are at the top of the food chain. Here's the food chain, starting with the oceans, going all the way to the top. We're at the very top. Now, if the food chain were destabilized, it wouldn't take much for us to fall off the food chain. For example, look at cereal crops. How many cereals do we eat? Corn, wheat, rye, just a handful. But if there's a disease, a blight, which affects corn or wheat, you're talking about mass starvation. A rice blight could affect all of Asia. So we are so dependent upon just a few crops because we are at the top of the food chain. So we have to be more careful about the world around us that we pollute.
You talk about a comet and meteorites. Just recently, we have found that there were many different asteroids coming to Earth just in the last 2 months, July and August. Now, the European Space Agency and NASA are talking about joining efforts to do something about it. Are we in really real danger?
Well, not in any immediate danger. However, we have to realize that the threat is real. We now realize that when rocks come in from outer space, deep space, they hit the Earth, sometimes they explode with the power of an atomic bomb. Now, we didn't know this because we don't register, we don't measure things happening way up there in outer space. But now we do, and we find what are called boloids. Boloids are rocks that explode way up in the upper atmosphere, and they explode with the power of an atomic bomb. So this is serious. Now, they don't reach the surface of the Earth because they vaporize way up in space, but it means that they're more common than we thought. Now, near-Earth object, NEO, near-Earth objects, we now realize that there are thousands of them, and we track them. The military tracks all these thousands of near-Earth objects, but we don't get all of them. And we basically look at them larger than a soccer field.
Yes.
If an object is larger than a football field, we can monitor it. Smaller than a football field, we don't. Which means that there could be thousands of objects that are the size of an apartment building that could hit the Earth and destroy an entire city. Now, a city buster that could hit the Earth and wipe out London, New York, or Moscow hits the Earth about once every 100 years. We've had 2 of them now hitting Russia.
In Chelyabinsk, yes.
Yeah. So 2 of them hit Russia within the last 100 years. So we expect that on average, a city buster hits the planet Earth. On average of a few thousand years, we have a nation buster, like Apophis. Apophis is an asteroid about 1,000 feet across, and it could destroy England if it were to hit England, and that's a nation buster. Every 10 million years, there's a planet buster, like what hit Mexico 65 million years ago. So we have to realize that it's a crapshoot. It's a gamble. We are gambling with objects in outer space. We track the big ones, but the little ones we don't track. And it means that we could be caught totally unprepared, like we were just this year, when an object with the force of 10 atomic bombs came right by the planet Earth.
On July 23rd?
Around that time, right? In fact, 2 of them, not just one.
Yeah, in August another one.
Yeah. So we now realize that we are more in danger than we previously thought. But on average, once every 100 years, one of the big ones, about the size of an apartment building, hits the Earth.
Will we be able to do something about Apophis? It's coming. I mean, it's just 10 years away.
Yeah, the answer is no. We are sitting ducks. We are defenseless, totally helpless. Let's say right now, some amateur astronomer sees an object bigger than an apartment building headed to the planet Earth. What can we do? The answer is nothing. Absolutely nothing. We have no space shuttle. We have no rockets that can easily reach deep space. We don't know the physics. Is the rocket going to blow up the asteroid? We have a lot of small asteroids. We don't know about the physics of these things. So we are children. We're children when it comes to threats from outer space.
However, humanity feels like when it comes, we're going to do something about it.
That's the movies. Everyone expects Bruce Willis to jump into the space shuttle, but A, there's no more space shuttle. B, there's no replacement for the space shuttle. C, we have no rockets capable of reaching deep space on a moment's notice.
Are you afraid of Apophis?
Well, the latest projection of Apophis, which is an asteroid about 1,000 feet across, shows that it will probably miss the first time around, about 2029. However, on the second pass, that's when all bets are off. Because in the first pass, it's going to go through the atmosphere, and we cannot predict accurately, using Newton's laws, what happens when an asteroid goes through air very well. So we don't know on the second pass if it will hit the Earth or not. Big question mark.
Are you afraid?
Well,
think? Because I am.
I think after the first pass, then we will have numbers to work with. But I think that in the meantime, we should seriously think about the possibility of one day doing something if an object that big were to come by. Apophis is a nation buster. It could take out England if it were to hit the Earth.
Well, after 2029, before it comes 2036, the same day, April 13th, we will have the time to do something, because then is when we are going to say, we have to do something now. Or it's going to be panic in the whole planet.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Now, some people say, why not simply nuke it with a nuclear weapon? That could make it worse, because instead of one asteroid, you may have 5 or 6 asteroids.
And radioactive now.
Right. Right. So right now, like I said, we are defenseless. We're clueless. We don't know what to do. We're caught with our pants down.
Well, I hope we will find something to do, because it's really scary. But probably it's going to make people think more about it and put more money into it.
Right, right. You see, most of us spend our lives looking at the ground. We spend all our lives looking at the floor. Very rarely do we look up to see that there's a universe up there. There's a whole universe having its cycles and motions independent of us humans. And so we have to look up sometimes.
To come back to the beginning of this interview about the UFOs, are you excited of what is happening now with the American government?
Yeah, I think it's exciting, because what's happening now is that people are realizing that we're reaching critical mass. So many sightings, so many videotapes, so many eyewitness accounts are accumulating. And the fact that we realize that, hey, maybe, just maybe there's something there. And in fact, scientists are now saying that because so many planets have been discovered, that one day we will find a twin of the Earth. That's the Holy Grail, the twin of the Earth in outer space. And so maybe they have life forms on them. And so all these are questions that were around for decades, but now the tide has shifted. Now, like I said, the burden of proof is no longer on the believers to prove that they're extraterrestrial. The burden of proof is on the government to prove that they're not extraterrestrial.
It is time to invest on that?
I think so. With a fraction of the money we spend on a battleship, we could definitely explore the physics and the engineering behind these things. See, this is a question of national security. Why do we have armies? Why do we have navies? Why do we have air forces? For security. But what happens if we bump into a civilization more advanced than us? That's a security question.
But it's difficult. They do something to us. They would have done it long ago, I think.
Yeah, I think that's an important point. They could be dangerous. They could be rapacious. They may want to conquer us. But I think not. Because if they're that advanced, they've already been here. They already decoded our language. They know our culture. And as a consequence, they haven't bothered to take us over. So I think for the most part, they're going to be peaceful. Because what do we have to offer them? Gold? I mean, for them, gold could be useless. It's just a yellow mineral. That's all it is for them. What do they want? Water? There's plenty of water in outer space. What do they want? There's nothing that we have that they can't get by going to Mars. An uninhabited planet where there's nobody to worry about, plenty of resources to plunder if they want, and so we have nothing to offer them for them to want to conquer us.
Why are they here? If they are here, why would they be here?
Well, we physicists have looked into the question of how to best explore the galaxy. In the movie 2001, you remember that there was on the moon an object.
Yes.
An object that scanned the solar system, looking for intelligent life, and it reproduced itself, made copies of itself, and shot into other distant moons. That is like a virus. A virus is just one molecule that colonizes your entire body in 2 weeks, and you start to sneeze and cough. That's amazing. So we shoot these viruses, and these intelligent civilizations can shoot these viruses called von Neumann probes to reproduce on moons and to scatter throughout the universe. So in other words, on our moon, there could be an object left over from a passing Type 3 civilization, because that's the most efficient way to explore the galaxy.
In your book, you mentioned the possibility that probably the visitors are not organic. Probably they are something else.
That's right. We, as humans, may eventually become part cybernetic in the future. We may actually merge with some of our creations. Now, realize that some people think that robots will eventually become so smart they'll take over, because they can be made smarter and smarter and smarter, and we are humans, we can't do that, okay? At a certain point, they may take over. However, there's another third possibility, and the third possibility is maybe we'll merge with them. This is not going to happen anytime soon, maybe on a scale of centuries into the future, but that is an option. Because once you're part cybernetic, you can become Superman. You can live forever. You can live on any planet you want. Any gravity, any atmospheric content. You can live anywhere in the universe if you're part cybernetic. And that could be the future of the human race. So when we meet an intelligent civilization, we should not be surprised if they're part cybernetic.
Are you excited to be living at this time?
I think of all the eras to be born in, this is perhaps the most exciting, because we're at the cusp of this rapid increase in science and technology. When I was a child, I used to read about the solar system. And we used to talk about Mars and Martians, talk about Saturn and Jupiter, but we had never visited them. They were a complete mystery. Now we've been to all the planets. We have gorgeous photographs of all these things. But when I was a child, we knew nothing, absolutely nothing about these planets and what's out there. So this, I think, is one of the best times to be alive, because we're at the cusp of understanding the universe.
You're an amazing person. Why did you become an astrophysicist?
Well, when I was 8 years old, something happened which changed my life. The newspapers had a story. A great scientist had died, and they put a picture of his desk on the front page. The caption said, "This is the unfinished manuscript of the greatest scientist of our time." So I was 8 years old. I said, well, why couldn't he finish this book? What's so hard? It's a homework problem, right? Why didn't he ask his mother? Well, I went to the library, and I found out this man was Albert Einstein. And the book was The Theory of Everything. He wanted the God equation, one equation 1 inch long that would allow us to read the mind of God, to unify all physical laws into one equation. So for me, this was greater than any murder mystery. This is greater than any adventure story. I had to know what was in that book. Why couldn't he finish it? Well, today, that's what I do for a living. We think we have the theory of everything, string theory. It's not in its final form, but we're testing aspects of it with the Large Hadron Collider. The God particle was discovered just a few years ago, and we think that this could be it. We're on the hot on the trail of the theory of everything.
Tell us more about that. This is fascinating.
Well, we believe that, why do we have electrons, neutrons, protons? Why do we have so many particles? Because they're just rubber bands, tiny rubber bands that vibrate in a certain way. This is an electron, this is a quark, this is a gauge particle. That's why we have so many. So all the subatomic particles are nothing but musical notes on a string. What is physics? Physics is the harmonies you can write on these vibrating strings. What is chemistry? Chemistry is the melodies that you can play on all these vibrating strings. What is the universe? The universe is a symphony of strings. And then what is the mind of God that Einstein spent 30 years of his life chasing after? The mind of God is cosmic music resonating through hyperspace. That is the mind of God.
Are you going to find it? Are you going to finish the book?
Well, that's what we hope. We hope to finish it, dot the I's and cross the T's. We hope to finish. We have the theory. The theory is not quite in its final form yet.
I heard that just the nanoseconds after the Big Bang, it's when really God manifested himself, because everything is a consequence of what is before.
Well, when I was a child, I realized that my parents were Buddhists, but I was raised as a Christian as a youth, and they have two different opinions about the origin of the universe. Christianity says there was a moment when God said, "Let there be light." In Buddhism is nirvana, no beginning, no end, this timeless nirvana. Now we have a new theory called the multiverse, which allows us to unify two different pictures. Our universe had a beginning. Our universe is a bubble. A bubble's expanding, that's called the Big Bang Theory. But there are other bubbles out there, other universes. They pop into existence, maybe they disappear. We have a bubble bath of baby universes. Our universe is one of these bubbles. And so, yes, our universe had a beginning, like the Bible says. Our universe had a beginning. But in nirvana, it's timelessness. And that is the bubble bath. So nirvana is the hyperspace in which bubbles form all the time. And that is called the multiverse theory, which is now the dominant theory in theoretical physics. It means that Big Bangs happen all the time. It means that we can go before the beginning. We can go before the instant of creation itself. Now, Stephen Hawking, my colleague, said that he did not believe in God because if the universe was created instantly, there was no time. There was no time for God to create the universe because the universe happened just like that. But you see, if there's a multiverse and universes are constantly being created, there's plenty of time to create a universe. So I think Stephen was wrong on this question.
Before we finish, I just want your opinion on Avi Loeb, what he found with Oumuamua. Do you think this was really a meteorite or was intelligent craft?
Well, we saw this object coming in from outer space, and using Newton's laws of motion, we went backwards. We tracked where it came from. And we said, my God, it came from outside the solar system. We've never seen this before. An object not within the Saturn, Jupiter's orbit, but outside the solar system itself. And the orbit was eccentric, it did not quite obey Newton's laws of motion. So maybe it was a rocket ship, some people said. Or maybe it was space dust. That's why the orbit is not quite exactly according to Einstein's prediction. Well, it came and it left, so we don't know. All we do know is that the universe is more mysterious than we thought, and visitors from another solar system are more common than we previously thought, outside our solar system. Who would have thought? And it means that we are part of a much larger universe. We spend all our time thinking about our solar system and the Earth, but there are other solar systems that can touch us. Things from other solar systems go right through our backyard all the time, and we were clueless until recently.
Like the Trappist system?
That's right. All of a sudden we see systems with not just one Earth-like planet, but many planets that are Earth-like. Remember the movie Star Wars? There was a scene where Luke Skywalker looked up in the sky and there were two suns. Astronomers laughed. They said, "Ha! Stupid! People don't realize you can't have two suns. The planet going around, it would be unstable." All the astronomers laughed. Now we find triple star systems, 3-star systems. In fact, the nearest star to the Earth is the Centauri system. Proxima Centauri is the 3rd star of a triple star system, and it has a planet going around it called Proxima b, which is the closest planet to the planet Earth that is Earth-like. And so the creators of Star Wars have the last laugh. They were right, astronomers were wrong.
Well, Dr. Kaku, thank you very much for this interview. On the name of all the Spanish-speaking viewers, thank you. I think we have enjoyed so much your knowledge because you are a very wise man, probably the cleverest in the planet. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Very nice interview.
Mm-hmm.
Probably the best of my life.
Oh.